brand new series and the very first episode here on the Vintage Oaks. Yes, so we've started, and I think this may well be, I'm not saying for definite, but could be the last new series of Farming Sim 2022, because as the weeks go by, and it's amazing how quick these weeks do go by, you know, we're going to find that you know, the 2025 version is going to be soon upon us, and I'm very much looking forward to that iteration or version of the game, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so no, very excited. Welcome, I should have said, to Sunnyside Up Farms. You might be wondering why I've called it Sunnyside Up Farms, and it's a very legitimate question. And the reason I've called it Sunnyside Up Farms, and the thumbnail should have given you a clue, we have, so I'll give you a proper tour when we get back on. Hang on, let's just stop the combine, tell you a little bit about the save. So we have bought, let's just zoom out, we have bought, where are we, the chicken farm, the field this side, obviously, the field in the middle, and then the field the other end, the other side. So we own 3 fields. We've bought the chicken farm. We've got 100 chickens, 60 are young, so they're not going to be producing no eggs, and 40 are going to be producing eggs. The plan is that we will obviously fill all of the chicken coops up. We will fill all of the chicken coops up, and we will be a big egg producer down here in little old Norfolk, and we are going to try and see how far we can get. So we're starting the save, as you can see, in 1987. There is a very good reason for that, a reason that I'm not going to tell you now, but will become very apparent in a little, in probably about 10 to 15 episodes or so time, I would imagine. But yes, so there, as I say, there is a reason for me starting at the point that I've started at. But yeah, so no, I'm very excited. As I say, we've got 3 fields. We've got this field of canola. We have got the field next door, that way, is wheat, and the field after that is oats. And as I say, the wheat field obviously to feed the chickens, the oats and the rapeseed to try and give us a little bit of money, because as I say, we're not rich. We've got £7,440, which in 1987, I'm guessing, meant that you felt like a millionaire. You know, bearing in mind that in 1978, I think it was, when my mum and dad bought their first house, it cost them a whopping £6,000. Yes, sold many years later in 2018, I think it was, for 245,000, I think it was. So definitely well worth the investment. But yeah, so as you can see, we've got an old combine, which is, and the farm is very loosely based on the first farm that I worked on, very loosely, and I say very loosely because the area looks nothing like it, but I have tried to go with some of the equipment they had. So this Class Dominator combine isn't all that far from the very first one that they had. So when I was a little boy in 1987, I used to, because, and I've said before, my Uncle Dick worked on the farm, my Uncle George worked on the farm, and my granddad worked on the farm, and my nan worked on the farm, and my aunt Gwen, who was married to Uncle George, she worked on the farm, but so nan was housekeeper for F.W. Hoyles, who was the owner of, so he was the owner of the farm that bought out the farm that Gwen worked for. So Gwen worked for I can't think of their initials now, but F Rose, but there is an initial in there. I can't remember if it's FW Rose. But anyway, worked for F Rose. Nan worked for FW Oils, and so he was a tennis umpire, travelled the world, you know, and he owned a farm in Sutton St James, which is where I live, where I come from, and where I was brought up, but for a brief spell in Norwich. You know, I've lived here all of my life, or around this area all of my life, because I did also live in Watplode for a few years, but that's only like sort of, I don't know, 6 miles down the road. So yeah, but as I say, so FW Hoyles ended up buying out Rose's farm. So Gwen still worked for Rose's, she was still housekeeper for them, and Nan still worked for FW Hoyles, and Nan was housekeeper for him. And the reason that FW Hoyles, because they are related, and the reason that FW Hoyles bought out Rose's farm was because Rose's farm was, as from what I understand, and you know, so sort of, don't quote me on it, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think they were going gradually out of business, and FW Hoyles' farm was just growing. FW Hoyles had a farm manager and one or two other managers, and Mr. Hoyles just let them get on with it. He basically provided the capital, but he left all of the farming decisions down to people that knew a lot about farming, and they were thriving and they were getting bigger and they were, you know, growing. FW Rose, on the other hand, they probably were not in the position to do the same thing, and they believed that they could run the farm, and as I say, it was sort of gradually going under. But the equipment they had was a Class Dominator that looked like this, and David Brown's. Now, when I worked then for, although I worked for Rose's, because they took over, Mr. Hoyles died, and I didn't realise we were getting full. So Mr. Hoyles died, and so Rose's then took over, immediately sacked the farm manager, immediately sacked all of the other managers, or made them redundant, didn't sack them, and they run the farm today, stopped the growth, and just kept it as it was. So it's between 1,000 and 1,200 acres, the farm is, and they still have most of the David Browns that they had back then, although Hoyles' was mainly Case. Now it's John Deere. You know, Rose's and there's a John Deere dealership like literally a mile, maybe 2 miles down the road, so they are now all John Deere combines, tractors, the lot. But they do still have the David Browns. And when I started working on the farm, so when I was at school, I went there for work experience. I went there for 2 weeks and really enjoyed it. Was very hopeful that from leaving school, so I was about 14, 15 at the time when I went and did work experience, and was very much hoping that they were going to give me a job, which didn't turn out to be the case, which you know, was very disappointing. The job wouldn't come there until 10 years later. So 10 years pass, I work at Tesco's, and I'm talking to a lady on the tills. So I'm working on the tills, the customer comes in, she's a farm owner, and we get talking, and over weeks and weeks and weeks of talking, she says to me, "You're actually quite knowledgeable about farming, why don't you come up to the farm and, you know, we'll have a look at you." So I was like, okay, fair enough. So I goes down to the farm, and while they don't offer me a job, they allow me to go and work. When I'm not working at Tesco's, they allow me to go and work on the farm, and she said, like, it'll get you experience. So I went down there and I was very, very grateful to them for, you know, helping me. And again, they were all John Deere as well. And what happened was, she was in one day and in Tesco's, and I'd done some ploughing for them, and she said, like, you know, my husband's very impressed with the ploughing that you've done, considering you've never done any before, you know, and we set you up and yeah, we got you going, but you know, you've still ploughed the field, and we're, you know, very impressed with how well you've ploughed it. So I was like, okay. So she goes, why don't you hire a tractor and plough? She said, and go off and try and find some farms to go and do like a day or 2 days ploughing with or whatever. And those farms might see how good you are at ploughing and, you know, offer you a job. And I have to be honest, at first I dismissed it, you know, I sort of didn't really I thought, nah, you know, no one's going to go for that, of course they're not. You know, I'm not being funny, but who the hell's going to lend me a tractor and a plough for a start, you know? Or no one's going to go for it. Anyway, a bit later that year, I have a car crash. So I've just bought myself a brand new Rover 45, right? And from a local garage, from Garner's Garage in St James, still operating today, barely, but still operating today. So you could go and visit. And I bought myself, as I say, a brand new Rover 45. That was probably in about July-ish, I would say. So now fast forward to November, and I've started seeing this woman. Right, I've started seeing this woman, and after work, she lived in Aldwych. Tesco's was in Aldwych, and she lived literally just across the road from Tesco's. Right, so I'm seeing this woman. So it's late at night. It's winter time, you know, and it's frosty. I'm coming home, and Double Days, which is the John Deere dealer, are on this quite sharp corner that goes downhill and then sort of round, and it sort of cambers towards their house, their farm, and then on the other side of that, there's some trees at the back of the house, and then it's their dealership. And I'm coming along there, and I'm going way too fast, and I go down the hill, round the corner, and my car just literally decides to steer, but to spin and slide, heading towards their house, right, and their wall. Now I don't want to hit that, because I'm thinking it's going to write my car off, that's the first thing, but Jesus, is it going to cost me a lot to rebuild their walls and stuff, and they've got brand new Range Rovers and everything else sitting in the drive. I'm thinking, you know, this bill could quickly run into the 20s to 30,000-40,000, you know. So I'm thinking, you know, and I've managed to get the car, or gracefully I would say, more than me, the car has decided to swim back the other way, and I've gone straight through their fence on the other side of the road, which housed all of their sheep, their cows, and their goats and everything else, right? So they've got like 3 massive fields, the grass fields in the side of the road. One has sheep, one has goats. One has goats and sheep, and the other two, have cows. So one is beef, and the other one is, I think, dairy. So I've gone through there, right? I've ended up in the field, right? It's about midnight, roughly. Mrs. Doubleday has come running out of the house and across into the field, and sort of flung open the car door, and I thought she was going to have a go at me. And, you know, are you alright? Are you, come to the house, you know, and what have you. Anyway, I get you a cup of tea. So anyway, to be fair, they really looks after me. And the next day, Graham says to me, that's her husband, says to me, you come up tomorrow to the dealership, and you come and see me anytime, whenever you're free, and we need to sort out, you know, how you're going to pay for this. So I was like, okay, fair enough. And I've completely written my car off. There's a fence post through the passenger door. There's a fence post that's come sort of partly through the bottom the car floor at the back. It's completely and utterly taken out the wing, the door on the passenger side. It's crumpled all of the wing and the door on the driver's. I mean, I've made a complete mess of my car. And the next day I goes up to the dealership and I has a word with him, and he says, look, you're going to pay for the repair of the fence. So I said, right. And then he said to me, he said, you know, you was insured, weren't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, is that how you're going to have to pay for it? So I said, yeah. So he said, okay. So he said, well, let me think about it. So I said, right. He said, give me your phone number, I'll ring you when I've thought about it. So anyway, he thinks about it, he rings me up and he says, look, I gotta be honest, he says, I'm not happy that you've gone through my fence. And you know, he said, luckily none of the sheep got out, and luckily you didn't hit any of the sheep either. So I said, yeah. So he said, I've got to let you off. He said, you can give us like £100 and we'll do the rest. He said, and the reason I'm doing that is because you've lost a car. And he said, and I'm assuming you've got finance out on the car. So I said, yeah, I got a bank loan out on the car. So he said, exactly. He said, so you've lost a car, you're still going to have to pay the loan back, and you're still going to have to get another car. So it's like, you know, fair enough. So I was really, really lucky. Anyway, fast forward now to the following year. So that was 2005. So now fast forward to 2006. Me and Graham have kept in touch, and every time I go into Double Days, you know, I buy my model tractors there, you know, and we always speak, and I've kind of not really become but, you know, familiar with them, and I'm, you know, sort of quite friendly with his daughter, quite friendly with his sons. His sons are very nice, and, you know, sort of a bit of a rapport has sort of built up, and I really appreciated everything they did for me. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, well, no one's going to lend me a tractor and a plough. And then one day I was in there and I was buying some models. So the models had sort of been released by Earl, I think it was, and some John Deere models. And I was in there, but I'd had them on the pre-order, and they rang me up and said, like, you know, they're in. So I'd had them on pre-order, and I've gone in and bought the models. And while I'm talking to Graham, I happened to mention, you know, I said, oh, you know, this lady says, oh, why don't you hire a tractor and plough, try and find some farms, and, you know, you might get a job, you know, because I'm really into my farming, and they knew that as well. And he sort of was like, yeah, you know, he said, like, you know, good idea. And anyway, that gets left at that. A day later, I get a phone call from him, and he says, James, I've been thinking. I said, what's that? He said, if you can find a farm, I'll give you the tractor and plough. I said, you what? He said, I'll lend you, I'll hire you out a tractor and plough. He said, on one condition. I said, what's that? He said, you get insurance for the tractor. So I said, okay. So I then goes off to a couple of farms, and they weren't interested. And then I go to Rose's farm, or FW Royals as it's known now. So I go to FW Royals and I say, look, and I say, my nan was still working there. So I go to them and I say, you know, I want to hire a tractor and plough, I want to do some ploughing, I want to show someone how, you know, good I am at tractor driving, and I'm worth giving a chance to. Now, initially they were like, we'll think about it. Then I can't remember quite the chain of events, but then I think I might have bumped into one of them in the local shop, in the village shop, and I said, have you thought about it? And he was like, oh no, don't worry, I'll have a word with Anthony, and I'll get in and I'll let you know. Okay, fair enough. So, right, anyway, I thought, well, they're obviously not keen. And then, I don't know, a few days probably had passed, and Anthony comes into the drive, because we're literally down the road. I can walk there in 2 minutes. So he comes into the drive, and he says, you know, I understand you want to do this and this. So I said, yeah. So he said, okay. He said, we'll have you in September. He said, come on September the 6th. So I said, right. He said, that way we'll have plenty of land cleared, and you can do the ploughing this year. So I said, oh, okay, thank you. So he said, what about a tractor? So I said, well, Doubledays have said that, you know, I can have a tractor and a plough as long as I can find a farm and I can get insurance. And he said, well, the insurance is no problem, we'll just put you on our insurance, that's fine, or we'll just put the tractor on our insurance, that's fine. So I was like, okay, you know, thanks very much. And so he says, right, he says, we'll see you then. So I was like, yeah. So go back to Doubleday, get the tractor. Anyway, go and do 2 weeks ploughing. At the end of the 2 weeks, I, you know, sort of said, you know, sort of plucked up the courage and said, you know, would you consider taking me on? And they said, not this year. So I said, right. And he said, but next year, Jim, who was one of the workers that were working there, he's retiring. He's retiring next November, year November. So I said, okay. So he said, we're thinking if we take you on July, August time, you're going to take on his job, but we're going to add a couple of other jobs to your, you know, sort of your tasks, if you like. So I said, right. So he said, but Jim will be able to show you the ropes. So I said, okay, fair enough. So he said, does that sound, you know, sort of acceptable? So I said, yeah, you know, absolutely. So he said, good. So anyway, throughout the next year, in the next spring, I get a phone call. Oh, you know, do you want to come and give us a hand? We're drilling. Yeah, I'll come and give you a hand. So I go and give him a hand. Do you want to come and learn some spraying? Yeah, I'll come and learn some spraying. And eventually, like, as I say, August comes along and I get a job. So I'm on the farm. So this is the sort of the 1987 F Rose version of the farm. So the David Browns, we've got a crawler. It's as near as I could find to a track marshal. I can't find anything nearer to a track marshal than what I've got. So I've got that. I've got another David Brown at the yard. But the difference between the David Brown that I've got and the David Brown that they had, which was a similar model, it wasn't quite the same model, was theirs did have a cab, whereas this one doesn't have, but it was as near as I could find. And so yeah, we're going to sort of basically farm, starting point from there, and then we're going to see where we can grow and where we can go between, I'm assuming, you know, now and 2025 version of the game. So it'll be interesting to see how far we get. I hope you, as I say, are going to enjoy the series, and what I'm going to do is I'm now going to switch over to some time lapse, and then we'll do some time lapse, and then if it's not at the end of this video, in either the next video or at some point we'll give you a little tour of the farm. But for those of you that are playing on Oaks, it's just the chicken farm, that's where we're starting, and we'll see how far we get. So as I say, I'm going to switch over to, I'm just going to empty into this trailer, and I'm going to switch over to some time lapse and a little bit of music for yourselves, and then we'll meet at the end, either when we've got this field done, or we might even get another one done. As I say, we've got sort of an allotted time that you know, that I'll record for each episode, just for the memory problems of my computer. So I've got a time that I know I can sort of fit in, sort of thing. And yeah, I'll see you at the end. Bye for now. And I'm back. So there we go, we got the rate field done. And it's probably got more off there than what I expected actually. I didn't usually, when you load a game in and start with the crops that it gives, it doesn't usually yield that well, but that seemed to yield okay. So we'll get just down here. I am going to leave the episode here because again, restrictions on memory, but I've got to say it's a lot of fun using the David Browns and the old combine and different things. They didn't have West trailers, funnily enough, on the farm. They were homemade blue trailers. They were blue trailers with white wheels, but I just could not find well, to be fair, I did actually find one, but it was full of errors, and so obviously it didn't make it in. Whereas those West trailers from, I think, is it Arm Team Modding or something like that, you can't go wrong. So and they're on the mod hub if anybody is interested in them or wants to know where you get them from. Yeah, they're on the mod hub. But yeah, so as I say, that's the first episode, and I've got to admit, I'm really enjoying using the David Browns and using the old Class Dominator combine. And as I say, we've got a tractor, or a track tractor, that is as close to a track marshal as I can get, and I'm looking forward to doing all of the plan. Basically loosely copying all of their equipment that they had, but we're not going to be sticking rigidly to it. We're starting off as close as we can, but as the save progresses and as we go through and as we start earning money and different things, then we'll go off and do our own things. So this is not going to be an exact, mainly because a lot of the tractors that they had back then, before I worked there, and then when I worked there, before I worked there, hang on, I'll say that in English so it all makes sense. So before I worked there, and then while I worked there, the tractors that they had, I can't find mods of, because I was going to do it, as near as possible, but I can't find half the mods required, to do that. So yeah, we'll just have to go with what we've got here, and yeah, I think as I say, I think it'll be good and it'll be okay. But as I say, I am going to leave the episode here, and this series will come out every Sunday. There may be a second episode sometimes. Just the only reason why I say that is Glengarry's not doing too well in terms of numbers, and if this one sort of does okay and then starts to outperform it, then I will kind of in a way be forced to maybe drop Glengarry. I enjoy the series very much, being a contractor and slowly building up, but at the same time, I'm a new channel and I have to kind of try and go with what works, and that at the moment isn't. I've had the last couple of episodes of Glengarry have not done all that well, and it's been over the last sort of month or so, it's been a steady decline. So yeah, it's a case of I've got to try and do the right thing, and if this one does well, or if the farm manager takes off, there could well become 3 episodes of that a week, or it may be that I'll start doing 2 episodes of 1950s Farm again, a week or whatever. But we'll figure it out. As it stands at the moment, we will be persevering with Glengarry, and hope that the viewing figures and numbers come back. And the other thing that I wanted to say is, We are now obviously into August, and we've got a new target for this month. We have now got a target of 475 subscribers by the time the 1st of September comes along. Now we're already at 461, so I know we can do it. We need 14 more subscribers between now and the 1st of September. I know we can do it. As I say, you guys have been absolutely brilliant. You know, if you haven't done already, please consider subscribing. You know, like the videos because that helps. More importantly, tell your friends about it and share it. You know, just share it everywhere. Share it wherever you want to share it, and just tell your friends about it. And if anyone else has got any kind of tips or ideas on how I can push the channel a little bit more and help it to grow and keep the numbers rising, and maybe even, you know, amazingly make them rise a little bit faster, that would be amazing. You know, we started last year, and then I didn't do no videos then for quite a few months, and then in sort of the end of January, February this year, I had 40 subscribers. I then started committing full time to it and doing regular videos every single day. That contributed to the ending of my relationship, but there we go. And I've still done it, and I'm loving every second of it. And you know, I would just love now to try and push it a little bit further, because as I say, like, you know, I try and do realistic playthroughs. I try and do you know, sort of realistic British playthroughs, but you know, I'm not opposed to doing an American or Ukrainian or, you know, Russian or Polish or wherever. You know, any sort of game ideas and suggestions that you may have for the future, then you know, put them forward in the comments. You know, the saves that we're playing at the moment, the Farm Manager and 1950s Farm, possibly Britain's, and we'll see where we are with Glengarry. Carmlands may well continue. That's still getting good numbers, and I'm really enjoying that one, to be fair. So that you know, that one will still be done. But so when 25 comes out, you know, we will be playing 22 alongside 25, because obviously there's not going to be many mod maps. There's not going to, you know, and so therefore the gameplay on that will get a bit same old quite quickly until stuff starts coming out. As the year passes, through the first year of 25, obviously more and more stuff will come, you know, more and more mod maps and what have you, and then we'll start to see, you know, where we want to be, and we'll see how we go from there. But anyway, I am going to leave the video here now, and thank you all ever so much for watching. Like I say, if you haven't done already, please consider subscribing, and all that's left for me to say is thanks ever so much for joining me on this episode. I've really enjoyed having your company, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye for now.